حي على الفلاح. There's two central aspects of the science. The first one is akhlaq, and it's getting your character aligned with the character of the Prophet ﷺ. That's at the center of this teaching. It's trying to align your character with the character of the Prophet ﷺ so that you actually follow his sunnah. I mean, one of the things that a lot of people do, they follow the sunnah of the beard, the siwak, the robe. They take all these outward sunnah, but then they don't follow the sunnah of smiling. Like they'll never smile. Now, the beard is an important sunnah, there's no doubt about that. But anybody can grow a beard. Do you know, it's an effortless practice. You just don't shave. Seriously, it's effortless. But smiling, when you don't feel like smiling, you know, that it takes effort to do that. And that's why it's one of his amazing sunnahs, is that he was constantly smiling. Al-Dahhak, that's one of his names, the one who smiled. And he always smiled when he saw people, you know, he greeted them with a smile. So that's one aspect. Now, the other aspect of the science is when you begin to inculcate prophetic qualities and practices, especially when you begin to do the devotional ones, because the Prophet كان يذكر الله في كل أحيانه, he used to mention Allah, like Aisha says in Sahih al-Bukhari. He remembered Allah in all of his states. So he did constant dhikr of Allah. If you begin to do those types of practices, certain things begin to happen. And that is what they call the ahwal, states. And states are real. People go into states. Now, there are different types of states. There are psychotic states. There are people that go into spiritual psychoses, where they do a lot of dhikr and they literally lose it. And I've seen this personally. I know that it's real. And you find it in other religions as well, where people, and I've seen people, I knew somebody who did dhikr all the time, and I used, you know, and it wasn't healthy. And they ended up thinking that they were a prophet. You know, that happens to people. You know, it's a type of spiritual psychosis. So you have to have balance. It's very important to have balance. And that's part of the Prophet ﷺ's teaching, is teaching people balance, how to maintain balance in your life. Like he said, that one of the Sahaba, he was doing dhikr all the time and fasting. He never spent any time with his wife. His wife went and complained to the Prophet. And the Prophet ﷺ told him, he said, no, your wife has rights over you. He said, I spend time with my family. That's also sunnah, to be with your family. There's a sunnah for sitting and enjoying yourself with your family. They had a food fight recorded in our tradition inside the house. They were throwing food at each other, and the Prophet was watching it, and he was laughing. You know, I mean, that's in the sunnah. That's a frivolous thing, but we know that recreation and frivolity is actually necessary for a healthy person. That if you don't do those things, you get sick. So it's not frivolous in that there is a purpose for it. Even frivolity has a purpose. What is problematic when that becomes your life? You know, when that's all your life is a search for fun and frivolity and things like that. Now, it's a science in that it's replicable. I mean, the definition of true science is falsifiability, according to Karl Popper. And falsifiability means that if you can't falsify something, then it's not science. It's philosophy or metaphysics or something else. Falsifiability enables you to, if you say that the sound barrier is broken at a certain speed, and every time you get to that speed, you hear the sound barrier broken, you can falsify that theory. You can test it. So if it doesn't happen the same way every time, then it's obviously not, the theory's not sound. So, or freezing ice at 0 Celsius. water freezes at 0 Celsius. If you keep testing that with calibrated instruments that are effective, and every single time it freezes at 0, you've falsified something, you've tested it, and shown that indeed you get the same replication of you can replicate that experiment. And the same is true for these inner sciences, is that people, when they do certain things, they get the same experiences. And that's why these books are very interesting, because they're books written in Sri Lanka, in Herat, in Turkey, in Morocco, by different scholars, and they're describing the same things, because the same things happen to people in different times and places. And in that way, it's replicable. So the ahwal, that's a separate science. That's a separate science. And that's really not, this is more about akhlaq and about behavior. So those are the two branches of this science, is the science of the states and stations, of the things that happen to people in those, and then trying to inculcate these qualities in oneself, which is what this book is about. So he's going to talk from the Quran about the maqam al-shukr, the station of gratitude and praise, al-shukr wal-hamd, the maqam of taqwa, the station of taqwa, and then there's degrees in that, of taqwa and shukr. Maqam al-dhikr, the station of dhikr, maqam al-sabr, the station of patience, maqam al-tawheed, maqam al-mahabba, the station of love, maqam al-tawakkul, the station of trust, maqam al-muraqaba, which is the station of vigilance, of awareness of the divine presence, maqam al-khawf, the station of fear, the state of awe, maqam al-raja, state of hope, maqam al-tawbah, and then maqam al-ikhlas, which is really, that's at the root. Sidi Ahmed Zarruq, in his Qawa'id, he said there's over 2,000 definitions of tasawwuf. But he said all of them revolve around sidq al-tawajjuh, sincerity.